next on the news. They destroyed this nativity scene and then came back to do it again.
I'm horrified.
Yeah, we were shocked.
I'm Jessica Easthope with what parishioners are saying about the people who vandalized this Queens church. A historic walkout. Over 7,000 New York City nurses on strike.
We were expecting something different from him.
Anger at the president, why people are furious with the commander-in-chief's visit to the U.S.-Mexico border, and why some feel it won't help those in search of a better life. The NFL's Damar Hamlin continues to recover after going into cardiac arrest. How you can save a loved one from a similar medical emergency. I'm Christine Persichetti. Currents News starts right now. Not a visit from the three kings, but two vandals destroying a nativity just hours before the Epiphany. And once wasn't enough. The two troublemakers circled back to St. Nicholas of Tolentine Church in Jamaica and ransacked the creche all over again. But Currents News' Jessica Easthope tells us parishioners there aren't seeking revenge. Instead, they're praying for something else. It was discovered the morning of the Feast of the Epiphany after two people came and tore down the decorations on this nativity scene outside of St. Nicholas of Tolentine Church and smashed the plexiglass. They came back for more, this time going inside to desecrate the statues. Hundreds filled the pews for Sunday Mass at St. Nicholas of Tolentine, an Epiphany celebration to present gifts to Jesus, closing out the joyful Christmas season. But just outside,
how could this happen? Why did it happen?
A harsh reality.
I'm horrified. It's blasphemy.
Parishioners walking out of Mass and past what they say is a shocking scene, a life-size nativity destroyed.
It's violent, people ready to destroy what is blessed and holy.
We don't know why these people are losing their faith and doing this kind of action against our church.
Baby Jesus statue was like this here.
Still in disbelief, Associate Pastor Father Thomas Joseph reenacted what happened. Thursday night, just before 8 p.m., the two men seen here in the church's surveillance video approach the nativity on a scooter. One tears down the lights and kicks the plexiglass door, and they ride off. But not even 2 hours later, they're back for more. They tear down the rest of the lights and go into the nativity, breaking the wooden statues of Mary and Jesus off their bases. In Mass, parishioners prayed for them.
That they may have conversion to repentance.
They say forgiveness isn't a question, because it's what Jesus would have done.
They really need to have more faith, maybe come to the church and learn about more about Jesus, about love and forgiveness.
We have to clear our hearts and our minds, and we have to forgive and move on. God forgives everyone, and so we have to do the same.
Father Joseph said the nativity is planned to come down this week. It will now have to be completely rebuilt before next Christmas. The church has informed the NYPD of the vandalism and will be cooperating with any investigation. So far, no arrests have been made. In Jamaica, Jessica Easthope, Currents News. Just a couple miles away, yet another nativity scene disturbed, this one in Jackson Heights at St. Joan of Arc Church. The pastor discovered early Saturday morning that the members of the Holy Family were not in the creche. Instead, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph were moved, placed in front of different doors all around the church. The pastor also discovered one of the three kings was damaged. The NYPD says it is investigating the incident.
Sinai, you can't hide.
Nurses on strike at two major private hospitals in New York City. More than 7,000 at Montefiore Medical Center in the Bronx and Mount Sinai in Manhattan walked off the job. They're demanding higher pay and increased staffing, things they've wanted since the beginning of the pandemic. But the protests are forcing hospitals to move patients, divert ambulances, and scale back other services like major surgeries. Montefiore nurses declined management's offer of a nearly 20% compounded wage increase and a commitment to create nearly 200 new positions. Other hospitals have already come to agreements with the union. Mayor Eric Adams said the city was ready for the challenges posed by the strike, but did ask New Yorkers to call 911 for emergencies only. Also tonight, Biden at the border.
This is nothing but for show.
Finally, for the first time, but the president didn't meet any migrants.
3 hours.
Is that enough?
No.
Obviously, it's not enough.
Was it a coincidence? Right now on Currents News, a country in crisis. According to a senior official, it was just by chance that the president visited a specific migrant center Sunday and didn't meet any asylum seekers there. But something that wasn't a coincidence, big cleanup efforts ahead of the president's touchdown. You're looking at an El Paso street weeks before the visit. Migrant families sleeping on the ground. And that same street just days before the president arrived. The encampment's gone. In recent weeks, tens of thousands of migrants have poured into El Paso, and right now it's being considered the hotspot of the border crisis. People living there say it's complicated. It's not something that can be understood in a 3-hour visit. Rosa Flores has the story from outside a Catholic church, a place migrants are calling home for now.
¿Y tú qué quieres ser cuando seas grande? What do you want to be?
Maestra.
Oh, she wants to be a teacher.
The Tovar sisters have been living in this makeshift migrant camp outside an El Paso church for a week.
Rapunzel.
Oh, she wants to be Rapunzel.
Playing with toys is a luxury they haven't enjoyed since they left Venezuela 4 months ago, according to their dad.
No hay educación para las niñas, nada.
He says that he decided to come to the United States because of the economic situation in Venezuela, because there's no education really for his daughters.
The Tovars are among the hundreds of migrants who call the streets of El Paso home, arguably the epicenter of the current border crisis. A scene President Joe Biden skipped during his first visit to the border, a short 3-hour stop in El Paso that prompted criticism by the governor of Texas.
This is nothing but for show.
And protest by local immigration and human rights advocates.
You are not alone.
Like Fernando Garcia.
You think this is a photo op for the president?
I think this is it. And in 3 hours, what you can do with them? But that feeling of disappointment is being transformed into outrage.
Outrage over policies like the Trump-era pandemic public health rule known as Title 42, says Garcia. That rule allows border agents to swiftly expel some migrants to Mexico. Biden said this about the policy.
I don't like Title 42.
Just days ago, he expanded the rule to Venezuelans, Cubans, Nicaraguans, and Haitians.
I think the only ones happy with the expansion of Title 42 are the Trumpist conservative Republicans, the people that supported Biden. I mean, we were expecting something different from him.
Something more humane, like the campaign promises he made, says Garcia. During his visit, Biden stopped by a port of entry, a migrant respite center, and by the border wall, but didn't appear to see or meet any migrants, which Garcia says means the president was not exposed to the full magnitude of the immigration crisis.
3 hours.
Is that enough?
No. Obviously, it's not enough.
The timing of the president's visit is also raising eyebrows because the situation here has significantly improved. Take a look. This is what it looked like in mid-December when hundreds of migrants were lining up in freezing temperatures waiting to turn themselves into immigration authorities. At the time, Border Patrol said that they were encountering about 2,500 migrants per day. Now, take a look. The lines are gone, and the symbol of deterrence here is the Texas National Guard and the fencing they put up. According to DHS, the number of migrant encounters has also decreased to about 700 per day.
Seven.
The Tovar sisters' favorite toy, a tablet to learn numbers and the English alphabet.
G.
Their dream, learning to speak English.
What would you tell the president?
Que apoya a los migrantes, porque no todos somos malos.
He says that his message to the president is that not all migrants are bad, that most of the migrants are like him. He's a father, he's here with his children, and they're just here for a better life.
That was Rosa Flores reporting. The U.S. bishops are against the administration's recent crackdown. They believe everyone fleeing violence, regardless of where they come from, has a right to seek safety in the United States. The chairman for the Committee on Migration, Bishop Mark Seitz, released this statement, saying in part, "This is a drastic departure from the administration's promise to create a fair, orderly, and humane immigration system and will only exacerbate challenges on both sides of our border. We urge urged the administration to reverse its present course in favor of humane solutions that recognize the God-given dignity of migrants and provide equitable access to immigration and humanitarian pathways. In the meantime, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency is looking into why an agent slammed a migrant to the ground. Surveillance video caught the incident on Friday. However, it didn't show what led up to the interaction. Witnesses say the agent involved used, quote, excessive force. No word if that agent in question is on leave during this investigation. Border Patrol released a statement on the matter saying, quote, although at the moment we do not have all the details of what occurred during this incident, Customs and Border Patrol takes all allegations of misconduct seriously, investigates thoroughly, and holds employees accountable when policies are violated. One of the leading voices for peace in Nicaragua made a visit to the Diocese of Immigrants this weekend. Auxiliary Bishop Silvio Jose Baez of Managua celebrated a special mass at St. Bridget's Church in Brooklyn, both for the Feast of the Epiphany and to pray for solidarity in Nicaragua. The church there has been facing civil unrest and persecution because of the dictatorship, and Baez has been incredibly outspoken against the regime. At Pope Francis's request, the auxiliary bishop fled the country's violence in 2019. Still, he told the people in Brooklyn his heart is in his homeland. Meanwhile, the Diocese of Brooklyn will soon have a new priest. Samuel Mwiwawi was ordained a transitional deacon at St. Bernard of Clairvaux in Brooklyn on Saturday. It was a packed church. Hundreds gathered for the future father, who for the last year and a half has been ministering to Catholics young and old to bring Christ into their lives. He even learned sign language so he can converse with the parish's deaf community. Bishop Robert Brennan ordained Deacon Samuel and said he hopes the deacon's devotion inspires others.
Some of you might have seen this ordination and having seen Deacon Samuel as he made his preparations and gets ready now to be a priest, to think about, wow, what a life that he's choosing to enter. Through the religious life, through the priesthood, God is calling people into his service. He's calling people into his service right here and now. Maybe somebody today may be inspired.
Being ordained a transitional deacon means Deacon Samuel will eventually become a priest in the Diocese of Brooklyn. That ordination is set to happen this June, and we wish him luck on his vocation and his journey. There's a lot more news headed your way.
And cheer for him and his family as they continue their fight.
Bigger than football, how NFL teams rally to support Damar Hamlin. And do you know what to do when someone goes into cardiac arrest? The tips that could save someone's life. Plus, 13 lucky babies baptized under a masterpiece.
As the fog lifted and the world watched.
The casket being brought out from the Basilica into St. Peter's Square.
They're really being very true to his request to celebrate something simple.
Currents News was live in New York.
I believe Cardinal Ratzinger did the Mass when John Paul II died.
And the Vatican.
He had his rosary in his hands, his crucifix. It was just a beautiful, beautiful, moving moment.
Bringing you closer to the final farewell of Pope Benedict XVI in St. Peter's Square.
Holy Father arriving now. He's in his white cassock with a stole.
Nostri omnipotens Deus, et dimissis peccatis nostris, perducat nos ad vitam aeternam.
Amen. Putting your faith in the news. Currents News.
Here's an amazing sports update that everyone wanted to hear. Prayers have been answered. Damar Hamlin is on his way home. The Buffalo Bills tweeted this: "We are thrilled and proud to share that Damar Hamlin has been released from the hospital and returned to Buffalo. He is doing well, and this is the next stage of his recovery." This amazing news comes as NFL teams rallied for Hamlin.
Prior to kickoff in each game, a celebration
and everybody thinking of Damar Hamlin and the encouragement.
All across the league, players, coaches, and fans had one message for Hamlin. We're thinking about you and praying for a speedy recovery. Hamlin went into cardiac arrest during Monday Night Football last week. No word yet if he will return for the rest of the season. But before being released from the hospital, he enjoyed a full slate of Sunday football. Prior to the Bills game, Hamlin posted this photo saying, "Game time." He then live tweeted the game as the Bills topped the Patriots in an emotional 35-23 win. He also shared a fundraiser with proceeds of T-shirt sales going to first responders and the University of Cincinnati Trauma Center. That's great. All it took was one hard hit to push Hamlin into a cardiac arrest. Emergency services did everything to restore his heartbeat while thousands looked on helpless. Knowing what to do when someone goes into a cardiac arrest could mean the difference between life and death. With over 300,000 cases a year, these simple steps could help you keep someone alive.
It can happen without warning, and when it does, time is of the essence.
There's about 350,000 out-of-hospital sudden cardiac arrests a year.
About 70 to 90% of people who suffer from this emergency condition die before they get to the hospital because those around them don't always know how to help. But CPR can double or even triple a person's odds of survival. However, only about 40% of Americans know this potentially life-saving procedure. If you suspect someone is in cardiac arrest, cardiologist Dr. Tara Narula says, first, make sure the scene is safe. Then call 911. And finally, start hands-only CPR. Place your palms on the person's chest.
Elbows locked, shoulders over, and you're going to push down hard and fast.
Narula says you should be depressing the chest by about 2 inches, and you do this at a rate of about 100 to 120 beats per minute. Songs can help you keep the rhythm. Think of these tunes while you pump your palms. They are all 120 beats per minute. If you have access to an automated external defibrillator, or AED, the box has simple steps on how to use it.
It's going to analyze the heart rhythm. If it detects a rhythm that's shockable, tells you don't touch the patient, it's going to deliver a shock.
As soon as the shock is delivered, go back to CPR for 2 minutes. Then the AED will analyze the heart rhythm again.
Don't be afraid to give hands-only CPR. Don't be afraid to use the defibrillator. You can save a life.
When performing CPR, it is important to remember who is in trouble. A little baby is smaller than a full-grown adult, so the CPR method is different. Rather than using your palm, press down with 2 fingers in the center of the baby's chest. In other health news, COVID deaths in New York State spiked 30% last month. That's the highest total since early 2022. The health department data showed 915 deaths in December were linked to coronavirus. Governor Kathy Hochul urged people to stay vigilant, warning we're not out of the woods yet. Meanwhile, the number of cases of RSV seem to be going down, and now there's a potential therapy to prevent infants from getting the lower respiratory tract infections caused by the virus. The FDA is reviewing the antibody treatment. The drug's trial showed it's more than 74% effective, and no safety concerns were found. There's some good news when it comes to the possible treatment of Alzheimer's. The FDA has approved one of the first experimental drugs to appear to slow cognitive decline. It's called lecanemab. Experts say it seems to reduce the amount of plaques in the brain of a person with the disease. However, the treatment also carries risks of brain swelling and bleeding. Still to come on Currents News, the church's newest Catholics baptized in the world's most famous chapel. What Pope Francis said to their godparents. Then this.
So it's just amazing that it finally found its way back.
It sounds like a Hollywood storyline, the message in a bottle that washed to shore 37 years later. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. Pilgrims can now pray at Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI's tomb. The Vatican opened the crypt of popes on Sunday, encouraging tourists and pilgrims alike to come visit. But you may have seen this tomb before. Benedict's remains were placed in the former tomb of St. John Paul II. The saint's remains were moved up to a chapel on the main floor of the basilica following his 2011 beatification. And from death to new life in perhaps one of the most remarkable holy places in this world. Pope Francis baptized 13 babies in the Sistine Chapel on Sunday, a special tradition marking the feast of the baptism of the Lord.
Io te battesso nel nome del Padre, del Figlio e dello Spirito Santo.
The chapel isn't just the place where popes are elected. It's also where some lucky children join the faith under Michelangelo's legendary masterpiece. Despite his knee problems, the Holy Father stood throughout an impromptu homily. He joked about the gift of children crying.
E come I bambini sono sinfonici, tutti andranno dietro di questo. Lasciateli gridare, lasciateli piangere. Forse qualcuno piange di fame. Allattateli, con tutta libertà.
A symphony, huh? The Pope also gave parents and godparents some advice. He told them to teach the children to pray as soon as possible, because if they know how to do that, God will provide them strength throughout their whole lives. All right, have you ever thrown something into the ocean and wondered where it would go? Well, one Kentucky man was hit with a wave of nostalgia when a message in a bottle he wrote as a child was returned to him after 37 years. Andy Madison has more on this swashbuckling story.
You know, something you never thought would happen.
Troy Heller was just 10 years old when he took a trip to Vero Beach, Florida.
That's me fishing on the dock of the houseboat we were staying on.
It was on this very pier where he did something he'd never done before.
Named Troy Heller from Louisville, Kentucky.
He wrote a message in a bottle and threw it in the Atlantic Ocean.
P.S. Whoever finds this, call me or write to me.
But he never imagined his message from 1985 would make its way back to him nearly 38 years later.
For it to be found is pretty wild.
On November 13th, in the aftermath of Hurricane Nicole, the bottle washed up on shore in Sebastian, Florida, about 13 miles north of Vero Beach, where Heller threw it in the water. It ended up in the hands of the Carmax family.
It's so exciting. We found a message in a bottle.
They opened it up and knew they just had to track down Heller.
Did you think that you would really find him?
Yes, I knew I actually would. I have some, we know how to find people.
The internet, plus Troy's old phone number and address, led them to Mount Washington.
I get a phone call from a Florida number, and I didn't recognize the number, so a lot of spam calls, so I just kind of let it go. And then a few minutes after that, I get a text message asking if this is Troy Heller, and then I get a picture, and the picture is of the letter. As soon as I saw it, I remembered writing it.
I was really happy because I was really looking forward to see who he was.
They were all blown away that the bottle stayed intact for decades.
I'm just surprised it didn't break. I really am.
The Carmax family posted about it on TikTok before mailing the original message back to Heller.
I thought I'd just throw it out in the ocean and just see where it went, you know, and so it's just amazing that it finally found its way back.
What a great story. I love that TikTok. And that was Andy Madison reporting. The 37-year-old letter is now framed and hanging on a wall in Heller's home in Mount Washington, a reminder of this once-in-a-lifetime adventure. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us, because we are putting your faith in the news. Before we go, let's take another look at the newest Catholics baptized by the Holy Father himself. Hope to see you again next time.